Gee, Smalls. I suppose you don't even know who the babe is either. It's Plug. What? Chewing tobacco?
Tobacco, man.
What do you do with it? You're killing me, Smalls.
Welcome back to Thinking Critical. This is Wes. We had a pretty interesting conversation last week with Gevian Dargan from Animated Concepts, and I thought we would build on that a little bit, go off on a different path. But, talking about generations, we are both Gen Xers, and I think you probably noticed this. I definitely noticed it where I was from. Like all of my parents got divorced when I was quite young. Almost all my friends' parents got divorced when they were quite young. And then as we all got older, very few of my friends actually ended up becoming parents. Obviously, I even waited quite a while. I didn't become a father until I was like 35. And so we're going to talk about, why are people scared of being like parents nowadays? Obviously, here with me is my good friend Gevian Dargan. How you doing, Gevian?
I'm doing well, Wes. I'm doing well. How are you today?
I'm doing fantastic. Now, I'm from the country. I'm from a little bitty farming town outside of Kansas City of about 1,200 people. You're from New York, right?
Yep, from the Bronx, South Bronx, boogie down. Mm-hmm.
Did you experience the same thing? Where you were there, where all of a sudden divorce kind of really took off, and we had broken families, and then as the children from these homes got older, they seemed to be gun shy about maybe diving into marriage, and even if they did that, becoming parents.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely had. Definitely for my situation, it was like, with the exception of my immediate family, when it came to a lot of my friends, it was sort of unique that my mom and dad were together, and my mom and dad were together up until she passed this past June. But they've been married and don't get mad at me. I can't remember how many years, but definitely over 30, if not 40 years. And that was a rare thing amongst my social circles. You had a lot of families where either the parents were divorced. I think the only two of my uncles and aunts had actually gotten divorced. And then everyone else was together, but sometimes the relationships could be a little problematic. But there definitely were a lot of broken families in terms of the mothers having the kids and being with them. So yeah, I don't think it's anything that's particularly unique to the Black community. Like, I know plenty of my white peers and other peers, if you will, who've seen the same thing. And then, yeah, when you get a little bit older, I think you get a little bit more wiser about walking into it. And, and some of the societal pressures didn't help either in terms of being able to have enough money to be married and raise a family and all this other good stuff. So yeah, it's
you hit on a good point there. So I think a lot of us experienced pretty widespread poverty because once you break nuclear families apart, they're still only earning what they're earning. So you end up in a smaller place, maybe an apartment, or you end up in the same house, but there's just not as much money to go around. So I think my generation, as thinking about becoming parents, they're very mindful of those things. I certainly was. When I was younger, I was like, I am not ready to be a parent. I remember being raised poor. I remember having to take baths by candlelight because we had no electricity. I remember having to boil water to heat up the bath water because we had no gas. I remember going through all those struggles, and the only thing in the cupboard maybe was a can of tuna and some crackers.
Mm-hmm.
And I was,
you got me beat on that one, Wes.
The way I thought about being a parent and the goals I wanted to achieve, but before I would even consider getting married and maybe settling down.
Yeah, you got me beat on that one. We have food, light, water, clothes in our back, foods in our bellies, but still, I think because of some of it definitely living in the South Bronx at the time I grew up in, there definitely was a lot of poverty. So the where I grew up in the Bronx, it was, if not still is, basically the poorest congressional district in the country. So, and it was a time that, and I never felt poor as a kid, and that's a real testament to my parents, is that we never felt poor. We just knew we were poor.
Man, we always felt poor, Gevian.
Yeah, no, we knew
we were poor, and we felt it. Let me put it that way.
Yeah, well, all I can say is to Robert and Gevian Dargan, and all of the kids that have any sense, tip their hats. Everyone to a man says that we never felt poor, but you knew you were poor, but you never felt it. But the thing was that a lot of that was because a lot of the white families who used to live in that neighborhood once pretty much the Fair Housing Act that they got passed, and black families started moving into neighborhoods that they normally couldn't move into before, based on laws, there was just a lot of white flight. And then in the wake of that white flight, you just had a lot of resources and things like that pulled out of those communities. So you made do. And I think when you take stuff like you're starting when you're starting behind the starting line, and then when you're walking into an environment now where basically like a lot of the, how can I say it? A lot of the stability that came out of the wake of World War II that the boomers enjoyed, that they were not necessarily leaving in place for the kids the generations coming behind them, where now outsourcing was becoming a thing and stuff like that. Job security wasn't exactly, wasn't like you could just walk into certain jobs and do what you could do before. At that point, if you really wanted a secure job, it was pretty much military, probably mostly the military, maybe city jobs. In New York at the time, that was iffy, man. We're talking about a time in New York when I was born and coming up. New York was declaring bankruptcy, and the rest of the country's about to write us all off. And then you're talking about higher education, and then there's a question of whether you can afford it or not. So, and of course, the standard, become a basketball player, become a football player, go into sports. Those are kind of like, if you really wanted to go into like stable, someplace where you have job security, those ways to do it. But there were barriers to entry, and the likelihood of you getting those, being successful in those things, they were limited. It's like, there's a reason why only 1% of the people who ever played or been an athlete in like basketball make it to the NBA. That's no guarantee.
Absolutely. So as we got older, I don't know if you experienced this. Obviously, when I left town and joined the military, there was no MySpace, there's no Facebook, there's no social media. Like email was kind of, I guess, if you had dial-up, we certainly didn't have anything like that. I didn't really have internet. Until I was maybe in my early 20s. Well, maybe my late teens into early 20s, finally started using email and all that kind of thing. I wasn't on social media, until my mid to late 20s. And I finally, we start adding up all these people I went to high school with and people that I'd been in the military with. And I'm starting to notice that none of us have kids. Some people here and there post some pictures of kids, but a lot of us, within my generation, about my age, are kind of childless up through the age of through their early or their late 20s, where my parents' generation, you normally had kids by the time you were like 22. You would have been settled down and started having kids. And I've started noticing these things, and I'm making friends, and my friends in the military that are my age, we're all even if they're married, they don't have kids. I remember a guy telling me he had like a 5-year-old kid. He was married to this really nice Korean lady. He was a Korean linguist. He'd gone over there, got married, and he moved into his neighborhood. And he said, it's the weirdest thing, Wes. He's like, when I was a kid, every house had at least one kid in the house. He goes, in my neighborhood, we are the only house with a child. Yep.
Because they cost money.
Well, you just have this entire generation of adults that were really scared of becoming parents. And I think it's terrible because now that I'm a father, like I said, I started late. I have 3 boys now. Basically when I was 35, I'm 43 and we're done. But man, I wish I had started earlier, man. The kids are great. This is like the most fun I've had in my life. I just wish my shoulders were holding up better.
No, yeah, and that's the thing. Like I inherited one and had 2, and then we had one came and passing through. And what it is that there is a real joy in basically loving and caring for and mentoring a child, even when you start to see the signs of them starting to turn on you. But, but by and large, what it is that it is a real privilege to be a parent. It is not something that's for everybody. I mean, I encourage, when it comes to marriage and having kids, I tell people, look, if it's not for you, just don't do it. But it's like, because first of all, for those of us who are married and are parents, we don't need you wrecking the curve in a bad way. But it's like, it is a real joy knowing that you played a part in a life, and not from some like grand egotistical puppet master kind of way, but that you're taking the lessons that you have learned in life, both good and bad, and you're helping someone to navigate life in a way that they don't make those mistakes, but they're making new mistakes. That's what I tell my kids all the time. I said, I don't care if you make mistakes, just make new mistakes, man. You know, you have your mother and I here. We're a wealth of knowledge and information. They have other people in their social circles and in our family and our friends, our loved ones, who they have a wide breadth of people who can basically help them to get through the things in life. And it's like, and to me, there's something very magical about that. Like as I watch my daughters, you know, day by day, month by month, year by year, and as they get older and they're changing, the phrase that I often say to myself when I'm talking about them out of pride is, I like the quality of their thoughts. It's like you can tell they're thinking, you can tell they're listening, they're bringing new insights to conversations that we have as a family. And I think if you do it right, I think if you're committed to it, it's something that you want to do. Even when some of them sneak in on you, like my last daughter, she kind of snuck in. She kind of snuck in on us. I wouldn't say she was planned, but just because she wasn't planned doesn't mean she wasn't wanted. They were planned, but it's like when you look at them and you just create this memory bank of just like great memories, good times, and even the bad times. It's just like, man, you just want to choke. It's like, yeah, but it's like I would not trade having my kids for anything. I enjoy being a dad, and I love being a dad. Now my wife enjoys being a mother. She loves being a mother, and it's like it's one of the great joys of life. But it's not for everybody, because what it does require yes, money, but it does require time and commitment. And the thing is that depending on your situation with your kids, they sort of anchor you. You know, it's like you really, like, there's things that I would have done in my mid-20s, in my mid-30s, right before I got married, in terms of interacting with other people in life, and a lot of that going, telling an employer, kick rocks, that once you have kids, man, you know, once you have a wife, once you have kids, you got to kind of temper some of the things that you say and do, because it ain't a one-man band no more. It ain't OMAC. It ain't one-man Army Corps no more. You're responsible. You got a tribe. You got a troop. You got a pack now. So you got to kind of take them into consideration before you do some of the things, even though you know it's right, but they're not wise. So.
Yeah, it's crazy. You know, not only you're going to see obviously the kids grow up, and you know they take on some of your little personality traits, or you all of a sudden you realize they like the same thing that you like now. Like, oh, he's paying attention. But really, you know, I could look at myself, you know, being introspective, and seeing like the change in me, even though, you know, like I said, I was an older gentleman when I became a father, but even the change that has occurred with me, not only starting with getting married, but, you know, all the way through the 6 years of fatherhood, just like I'm almost a completely different person. I'm much more patient. I'm much more empathetic. I was already changing, but they've absolutely accelerated these things. I remember the first time, you know, you said when you got married, your wife already had a child?
Yeah, when she got married, she already had a son. So I believe he was 6 at the time we got married, if I remember.
Okay, right. So it might have been a little bit different for you, but I bet it wasn't. Because I remember that when I was in the hospital, we had the first baby, and they bring the baby in, and the in-laws are in there, and we're having a nice time, and I'm holding the baby, the mother-in-law is holding the baby, and the father-in-law is holding the baby, and we're having a good time. They're like, all right, we're leaving. I'm like, what do you mean you're leaving? It's just me and the wife with this baby, and my wife had surgery because there were some complications. So she was bedridden. It was just me. I was like, this is the most scared I've ever been in my life. I was on the mountainside in Afghanistan. I almost got blown up a couple of times. I was not as scared during those moments as I was when that door closed. It was just me and this baby and my bedridden wife who needed help as well. I was like, oh my, what am I going to do here? I've never been a father. I've never had a baby. And obviously I've had some nieces and nephews, but it's completely different. And then, you know, and nowadays I've got 3 boys now. My wife can be out of the house. One of them could be sick. One of them could be doing this and this, and I can handle it.
I think you make a great point. It does change you. And I think in a more sense, it reveals in a lot of ways whom you already are. Like, you know, like I said, like with me, it's like when you come into, when I got married, it was sort of a package deal. And it was a little difficult to navigate, because it's a little bit different when you have a stepchild, where it's like you can kind of get probably maybe 1 or 2 results. Well, maybe 1 or 3 results, where one is constant contention because the child doesn't recognize you as a parent, didn't want you coming in the first place, and so on and so forth. You can get another sense where the child just really gloms onto you, and it's like, you guys would have never known that you weren't blood relatives. And then you get kind of like a mixed bag, like it was with my situation, where it's like definitely you get the sense of like, you're having a good time and doing that, but as it got older, it became more of the recognition we're not a blood relative thing. But I think what it is that when you walk into it, you just realize you're responsible for people. I really credit Pastor Robert Wilson, who basically we did our premarital counseling with. And he was the one that was the first time I got introduced to the idea of servant leadership. And he was like, basically like, no, you as the head of this family, the husband and the father, you have to realize that you're there to serve their interests. It doesn't mean that you don't have interests of your own, but you're there to make sure that their interests and their needs are met, whatever they may be. And that really helped to crystallize for me what I'm supposed to be as a husband and a father. And everything that I did from that point, even sometimes when I didn't want to do it, I did from that point, really helped me to keep me focused on. And it did change me. It was something like, my wife has said that, she realized that from the time I got married, and the time that I've been married, I've been less angry, more patient, definitely been more empathetic, because what you start to realize is, especially when you're married, and you have the kids, is you start to see how some people become adults. you start to see how people become adults, either because of the influences of their life or the lack of influences in life, and sometimes both. And when you start to see that, then you start to look at other people as adults and other kids, and you start to go, okay, so that's probably what some of that's about. And then it makes you as a person change and adjust, because you go, I want my kid to have some more of that. I don't want that to ever happen if I can avoid it. But it gives you a clarity and an insight into people and into yourself that I don't think you've had before. Because one of my mentors said, she said, when sometimes I deal with the anger issues a bit, she says that what she has found is that if somebody's angry, there's some moment in your childhood to which that anger is tied to. And every time you get angry about something, you need to think real hard about what is it about this circumstance that's caused you to be like that. And I think being a parent, being a spouse, it opens you up to more of that introspective thinking. And you really do kind of want to be a better person as a result. And you make the effort to do it. And I think that, to me, that's the joy of parenthood. It's like, those suckers, they challenge you and they make you think about stuff. Because, especially when they start to get in the probably the 9 to 10 range, when that preteen range, when they start now to think for themselves, to challenge you a bit, or they'll throw some whoppers at you, man. They'll have you going, man, actually, I never thought about it like that.
Yeah, my kids, obviously are like 6 and 2. So I get some fun questions. And, as an uncle, I want to be a funny uncle, and I would give like really funny answers, and I would kind of evade anything that seemed like too deep. But once it's your own kid, and he's like, is grandma in heaven? What's she doing there? Like, okay, let's talk about this.
Well, I'll see her again. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. You kind of get these deep questions, and I don't get to just go off, whatever thing I think will be funny in the moment, as I avoid actually talking about these type of deep things. It definitely, like I said, you have to deal with your own emotions and kind of mature as an adult. And this last 2 years has been really crazy. With everything that happened with COVID. I know it's different, wherever you are in the United States or wherever you are in the world, but here in the Philippines, essentially, things are open, but they're not open. Like I can't take my 6-year-old to the department store to go pick out clothes with him. He's not allowed in there. My wife and I can't take the boys out for a dinner at a restaurant. They're not allowed in the restaurant. You have to be an adult. They're allowed in very few places. So it's made things more interesting. We obviously, don't really leave. I go out and get groceries. We might go out and get food or whatever. We pretty much stay at home. And I could imagine trying to do this, without my wife, who's absolutely a better person than I am. But, you have to make life still fun. You still have to get them out there. And, I don't want my son to be shut in for 3 years and all of a sudden he doesn't know how to make friends or whatever. So it's been a unique challenge.
Yeah, and you're right about that. Yeah, no, you're right about that one. I mean, I have to say probably on both sides we got spared because now for most of the COVID thing, I have been able to keep going to work during the day, So I have not been trapped in the house with the kids like my wife. And I think on some levels that was good because that was good, but I think on some levels it was bad because I think they've sort of formed a secret pact against me.
Mm-hmm.
but it's like to your point, it's like with the kids, especially with the great disaster, it's like you just realize how much they need each other's company. The kids need each other's company. I mean, my kids are going back to school. People keep asking me, and it's they'll probably be asking me, they're like, "Well, how are your kids doing now being back in school?" And it's like they love it. I mean, this is the first time they have gone back to school, and they have not complained about the fact that summer was over. They're back in school. They ain't complaining about homework. They are so delighted and overjoyed to be back in school and to be amongst their peers. It's like, look, don't get me wrong. And you know this as a dad. And this is one of the things of being a dad is that any of you who are fathers out there, any of you who are about to become fathers, just accept the simple, salient fact of life. You're always going to love their mother more than you. That's just the way it goes. All kids love mom more so than dad. And it's not because dad has to play the bad guys. There's something about moms that just a lot more easygoing than the kids when dads have to be. But it's like, yeah, it's something where, like you say, it's like you almost can't imagine doing the parenting thing without your spouse. Like for me, my wife and my daughters are working me over the head, neck, and shoulders about my profanity. It's like, they're really taking me to task for it, and they're making me think about it. And they're making me have to think about it. Like, I'm not of the mind, even though I'm a Christian, I'm not of the mind there's anything wrong with cursing. I can understand at some levels why it's not effective in your witness, but it's like in terms of just saying the curse word is that this is that. But they have made it very clear that they don't appreciate it being other than their presence. And it's led to some interesting conversations. It's like, my wife would I'll say, look, I do this in front of whatever. It's like, well, I'm not everybody else. And even the girls will go, I'm not everybody else either. It's like, wait a minute, I didn't sign up for this. I'm a grown man. But it's like, because
my 6-year-old he's imitating everything I say. So I have a curse word here or there. And my 2-year-old is learning how to speak. And I have to be very mindful because he imitates essentially every word that I try to say. And there's been a couple of times when my 6-year-old says something, I had sit him down and was like, listen, I know it doesn't seem fair, but it's okay when Daddy says it. I was like, how are you saying this? This is awful. I don't want to make the speech again. It's only okay when Daddy does it.
Basically, and that's the worst part. When sometimes you sit there, okay, man, I'm being a real hypocrite. Yeah, or I'm just trying to lay down the facts of life, and it's just like,
you know what the kid go in front of the priest and say it? Like, my wife would be shaved forever.
No, because that was a friend of ours. That was one of the things as we've been going through. She was like, one day their daughter was sitting there and like the crayon broke at the wrong moment. She went, "Damn it!" And she said it the same way her father had said 2 or 3 days before that. So they had to sit down and have a talk about it. And it's like, yeah, because what it does is it brings you to a new level of self-awareness and responsibility that you didn't have before. As a matter of fact, you said, you kind of like it, but at the same time, you're like, I didn't sign up for this. I didn't come here to be, have they basically have my own focus group, my own quality control group, telling me how to live my life. But it's like, there's almost something sublime about being a parent. And there's plenty of people who they don't want to do it. And I understand completely why you would not want to do it, because it really does change everything. It's like you really cannot move forward in life from that point forward just thinking of yourself.
All spontaneity is gone.
Yeah, all the spontaneity, exactly. All the spontaneity is gone. And you really are, in a sense, you're subsuming to some degree your own needs for them. And there are other people, like I always think of like, if I had to think of a cautionary tale, because he presents and has a problem with himself as a cautionary tale, that's Ric Flair. And if you read Ric Flair's, either his biography, I believe it was To Be the Man, or you hear him talk about in interviews, he'll tell you to your face, and I think he'll tell you to your face, he wish he had done things differently in terms of raising his kids. Like he hadn't kind of like, if he had thought about them more, put their needs more first than just doing what he wanted to do. Like he said, I think I remember reading this. Yeah, exactly. Living a gimmick. He said one time the wife and the kids came home and he was drinking with some other wrestler. They were like passed out on the floor in their own vomit, and he started realizing basically how little, more and more, how little they respected him as the years went on. Like one time he tried to, I want to say it was Reed because I don't have the book in front of me, but one of his sons was basically doing something with his kid, and Rick tried to step in to try to correct or offer some counsel, and it was kind of like, back off, I got this. Like, you're the last person to try to tell me basically.
When I want advice on body slams, you're the first place
basically. Yeah. Oh no, and it's something that when you're in that role, you really have to understand what it means. There's a documentary, Hoop Dreams. Oh, one of the most devastating scenes in that film is when the father wasn't home for a bit, and the next time the kid saw him, he was playing the basketball court, and he sees the father buying crack from somebody in the alley. And then when you kind of fast forward later to when it comes time to the kid having to make decisions about college and where he's going to go, and when the father starts to try to give counsel, oh man, that kid is just like, really? You think it's kind of like, you think it ain't about what? That's what he said. That's the look, the body language. It was like, you ain't gonna tell me. You ain't got nothing to really say about this.
I remember the scene where they're playing basketball together, and you can see there's nothing that son wants in the world but to beat his old man.
Exactly.
Just to show him that he's better at the thing that he loves.
It's just like, it's like, and the thing is that, and I feel sorry for fathers who find themselves in that position, because it's like, dude, even if you do it right, for the most part, like with my dad, like all of us as siblings, sometimes my brothers and I talk. Sometimes there'll be some things about our dad, they just really grate your nerves. It's just like, dude, what is wrong with him? Why can't? But it's like, because of everything that he has poured into your life, both in terms of material needs, immaterial needs, in terms of just looking out for you and having a plan for you that sometimes you didn't even know they had a plan for you. It's like they always have like this level of respect, this level of affection, that there's nothing they can say or do to take that away. Because first of all, you realize they're human beings just like you, but you also realize they looked out for you the best that they can. And that's one of the things that, I don't know if you went through this, Wes. I remember when we became a father, one of my friends and I, we were talking about it, and we got to the thing of talking about like corporal punishment, spanking. Lesson was spanking. And me and my friend, we were talking, and we got to the subject. I said, dude, it's like, man, it's like sometimes I just feel like when I spank my kid, it's like I feel like I'm beating out of them whatever it was that was going to make them special. Like whatever was going to make them like the next Bill Gates or Jeff Bezos. Like it's like I'm spanking it out of them. And he's like, yeah, man, I feel the same way. And what we started to realize with a lot of young parents is that the scary part you were talking about when that door closed and you realize you're alone, is that you actually realize you don't really know what the hell you're doing. You're like, wait a minute now. It's like nobody gives you a manual. At best, you're approximating what your parents did, and you didn't even agree with half of what they did. But it's like that idea of like, whoa. It's like, wait a minute, I'm responsible for this.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like I mentioned earlier, my parents were divorced, but my dad is like he's a super duper good guy. He's very responsible. He was granted, I think, 2 weeks a month. He got 2 weekends a month, with the kids. He had us almost every weekend because my mom was out partying and stuff. And he never missed a baseball game. Like he went above and beyond. He paid more child support than was court ordered. He did the most he could do to be a part of our lives and everything. And I greatly admire him. But I do remember the first time I came back from boot camp. And I'd started my classes out in California as I was getting ready to be a space operator. And we went up to hug each other, and I felt uncomfortable because he wasn't always there. So like hugging your dad wasn't like the most normal thing. And even when I would hug my brothers, even though I love them dearly, I love my brothers to death, I always felt uncomfortable. I was like, that was one thing I was like, I'm going to change that. My son will hug anybody in the family, especially men. I was like, thank you. Go hug your grandpa right now. You better tell him you love him. I wanted to take that right out of the equation. Just like, it's something that was in my mind that I wanted to change.
Oh yeah, no. Because it was the same dynamic with me and my family. It's like with my family, my dad was always there. He just wasn't a hugger. We were not huggers. We're not like openly affectionate like that. And the thing was, I was like, I listened to my siblings talk about it. I think they had more of a need of that personal physical affection than I did. I didn't think I missed out on it, but I realized, same like you, for my kids, I made a point of allowing them to like lay up on me all the time. It's like, kids, as a baby, you'll lay them on top of you. And I wanted them to have that same sense of physical connection with me that they did with their mother. But then sometimes my daughters, when they were younger, they would come to like lay on top of me or sit in my lap, and I would actually kind of flinch because I'm like, what the like, what's this? What are you doing? It's just my wife would like, just want to be close to you. I'm like, oh, okay, all right.
No, you used to this. No one wants to be close to me.
But it's like, but you make a point at. So even my oldest daughter, you know, like for the last year or so, she would come up to hug me, and it was just weird because it was like, I'm just not used to greeting people like that. And now I think she's making the pre-teen to teen turn because she just turned 12, so now she's not doing it as much. I said, okay, I guess I missed my window. My window's gone.
I think people probably notice I have this line in my head right now. They're like, Wes, you look ridiculous. You know, you're 40 years old. Why do you have a line in your head? I took my son. It's one of the things that we can do together. I grab my 6-year-old. We go to the barber shop and we get our haircut. We get a little dad and son time. And he gets his haircut. He's like, I wanted a line in my head because I see the kids that are in the neighborhood that he does get to see. They have lines. It means you're cool or whatever. So he's like, I want a line in my head. So I make sure he gets his line in his head. And when I'm getting my haircut, he comes up and he's like, Dad, you need to get a line too. And I was like, I've only got so many more years before my son thinks I'm cool and wants us to match. Like, damn right, give me a line.
You gotta have the resources too.
I don't mind looking ridiculous.
I said my hairline is conceited and gave up. It's like
we got home. My wife thought it was hilarious.
Oh no, that's great. No, and that's the thing is that what it also I think what also parenthood represents in its best tradition is that I tell my kids all the time. I said, so look, there's some things your old man's gonna say. You take that joint and it's solid gold. You put it in your little book that's called life, and you keep it there. There's some of the things I'm gonna say where you just realize, yo, he's contradicted everything he ever said in life. That don't make sense, or this is that. You take that joint when I'm not looking, you throw it over your shoulder and get rid of it. I said, and the thing is that because what happens is as you go through the generations, if you're keeping those, if each family is being parent, as you go along, all of the good stuff gets passed along, and I think there gets to be a critical mass. Like when I look at my family. Despite some of the real trials and tribulations that we've had, one thing that I know we've kept alive in my family, which I enjoyed when I was growing up as a kid, was that we always had the ability to talk with each other about stuff frankly and to have like real conversations. And that's one of the things when I go to church and I testify about my family, I say I'm always grateful for the fact that I can talk openly and honestly with my wife and my daughter, and that we can have real conversations about how I'm feeling, how they're feeling, get a real good understanding of each other. Because there's so much in life that happens, especially I think when you're growing up as a kid, and even as an adult, where you can kind of get into your own head and start thinking certain things and start thinking that people don't love you, they don't care about you, they don't appreciate you. And so much of life, and I think, and we talked last week about a lot of it was very political based, but so much of where a lot of this division comes from is my firm belief. It's just a lack of communication. It's just we don't talk to each other. We don't ask like, why is it that, why is it that you do X, Y, and Z? Or what do you think this is about? And to be able to hear that without getting offended, to hear that without being offended, and say, you know what? Okay, I never thought about that. Or have you thought about this? But communication is so key to parenthood. Like really listen to what your kid is saying. Like me and my daughter one time, we got into what I was calling Monday night fights. My youngest daughter, it came around math homework. So it's like, have you ever seen, I think it was Incredibles 2, where the dad is with, what is his name, Dash, and he's like, what kind of math is this? And like the book is like the new math thing. And me and my daughter were having that exact same fight. I'm like, look, it's called a multiplication table, okay? You do, but Dad, that's not why they do it. This is supposed to do it in your head. So I actually had to go to the school and almost like, what are you guys teaching? What are you guys teaching my kids? So they explained that it's like, yeah, they want to do the math in their head to a certain degree because they want to be able to figure things out and not do it for rote memorization. But they never told them not to do any work whatsoever. So once I went back home,
I got in trouble for doing that.
Yeah, exactly. But when I went back, they actually started a math support group at the school, a math support group
for dads,
for dads and the parents, because they realized that kids were coming back and everybody was frustrated with the math work. because the kids weren't explaining it right, and the parents didn't understand what they were doing. So I told her, I put it all on Facebook. I praised the BAF support group. I said, "Oh, thank you, because kept the happy home happy, because this was about to turn into some fist fights at a certain point with these families." But I say all that to say is that communication is so key to parenting, because your kid does need to understand on a regular basis that you're there for them, that you're looking out for them, that you have your best interest for them, and you need to understand that the kid is not out to get you sometimes. You need to understand that. So
I definitely want to point out, obviously, Gevian and I are coming from a perspective of two married men. And if you are a single father or a single mother and you have kids there, I tip my hat to you. We have two parents in this home, and I'm overwhelmed. I can't imagine like the situation you're going through, and I imagine you're getting the same blessings, but on a completely different scale. Working with kids, and it could be so much fun, but it's also so much work. I do want to say, we're talking about how much being a parent has blessed us, grown me as a person, really grounded me in my beliefs and in the way that I'm seeing the world in a perspective that is much healthier for me and makes me a better person. But do not tread into being a parent lightly. It is a lot of work. It's a lot of responsibility. You give up a lot of your personal freedoms. You no longer get to put yourself first. No, that goes out the window. And the other thing you have to realize is that you're the training ground. You're the proving ground for basically how they learn how to interact with other people. There's nothing more frustrating about being a parent than when you send your kids to stay with somebody else, and then when you go to pick your kids up and they go, "Your kid is such a delight. This is so lovely." When we went to go do grocery shopping, and they offered to carry the bags and everything else, and I'm looking around like, "The kid are you talking about?" I said, "I could have 50 bags." That's what that happened. I said, "I have 50 bags in the car," and they'll see me like juggling 30 and like trying to get the 31st one. Yeah, they grab their phone at halfway inside the house with the clothes off. But it's like, it is hard work, because, like you said, they become the focus. They become the focus of your life, and they're supposed to, because they can't fend for themselves. Even when they think they can, they don't know. Like I said, if we as parents can acknowledge that we don't know what we're doing, you take that and multiply it by 100 with a kid, but it is a lot of work. It is not, like you said, it's not something to tread into lightly. I tell people the same thing when it comes to parenting, when it comes to marriage. It's like, it's no joke. I don't want to, because I don't want to be one of the people that say, "Oh, it's so hard," because because you don't want to give it that much of a negative connotation, but you do want to be realistic about the fact that even in marriage, it's like it requires so much compromise. You really have to do two things. You have to realize what hills you're willing to die on. In other words, are you going to have a marriage, or you're going to keep a marriage, or a scorecard? And then the other part, I like Samuel Jackson's advice on this. He's like, and sometimes you just got to say sorry even when you ain't. you just got to keep it moving, man. It's like, and you got to realize, and the other thing you got to realize is that sometimes, and this goes on both ends with spouses, is that sometimes you will say something to your spouse or to your kid, it is rock solid, it's money. It's like you up there with Ben Franklin and all the rest of the philosophers of the world, Aristotle, all of them. And it's like they will not hear what you're saying until they hear it from somebody else. I don't know. Sometimes they come along and say the same exact thing, and it's like the heaven is open and manna starts pouring down. And it's basically, but it's like, it is like it's hard. It's hard, but it's worth it. I mean, maybe that's the way I look at it. It's rewarding. Yeah, but it is hard. It is not something like, you will get frustrated parenting, because kids don't listen sometimes. They just do what they want to do. And the only thing I would recommend to anybody who's considering becoming a parent, who is now entering into becoming a parent, it's like, if you have those support groups, and I don't care whether they're your parents, other married couples, single folk, who you just have a good support group. Have people you can honestly talk to about your parent experiences. Same thing goes when you're married too. Now, you don't get people with busybodies. You don't get people. You got to be sometimes you be careful about that. You don't get people who are actually against these institutions, and they're just trying to like, come on, girl, come on. We call them dormitories, or the barracks attorney in the military, and these are disgruntled people that as soon as like you're sitting together, gives them some information, they will twist it into be like your husband's a piece of crap or your wife's a piece of crap. You shouldn't be together. It's time to think about divorce. You like
exactly. Yeah, you don't want those.
There's crazy people out there that just hate other people being happy.
Exactly. There you go. Exactly. So you got to be careful of those right there. But it's like, yeah, you want to have that source of support group because sometimes you just need to vent. Like, look, like my wife, she'll go out to eat with her friends. I don't know if she talks about our marriage, but I don't care. I want her to talk about marriage because there's some things that she may be feeling about a relationship that honestly she can't talk to me about because I'm the problem. That's what it is. I'm the problem. And sometimes I go talk to people about our marriage because I can't talk to her because she's the problem. And then you do come to talk together sometime once you've processed, and then you can like talk to each other in a way where you're now trying to move forward as opposed to scoring points. And it's the same thing with your kids. When you want to talk to your kids about something, I always tell a parent, it's like if you're upset with your kid, but you can basically at any point count to 10 and still have that conversation, then you're good. But you never want to have a confrontation with your kid where you're like all in your emotions and you're feeling like totally disrespected. It almost never goes down well. And as a parent, you're always going to have one of those 2 times where you fail miserably as a human being. If I was a parent, you lose it. You just go, it's just my wife does it, I do it. It just hit that particular nerve. And usually what I tell my kids is, because it's true, it's like I was really thinking about something else and you just drop that that spoonful of peanut butter in the wrong place at the wrong time. It's like, what is wrong with you? You just, it's like,
I remember my nephew, he's obviously a younger man. He's married. He's got 2 kids now. And we were talking about these things, and obviously he was looking for an outside perspective. And I gave him a couple pieces of advice. So I was like, if you cannot see yourself living in a house with this person and hating each other for a year, you might want to get married because there's always going to be a bad spell. Right. And then I said, and then when you're going to have a kid, she's going to say something that is the most hateful, meanest thing that you've ever been told in your life while she's pregnant. She doesn't mean it.
Brother Wes, you are wise beyond years.
Whoa, they go so out of whack. They're going to say the meanest thing that you've ever heard. If you're about to be a father, if you're, she's coming up to the end, they're going to hear a doozy. Just let it. Yeah. Don't react. That's what they're looking for.
It's like, dude, it's like you are so right. When my
jaw was on the floor when my wife gave me that one. I was like, what? I was like, what did you just say to me?
Like, it was like, how do you cry? What? Basically, it was like, huh?
No one's ever been that mean to me in my life.
Basically, and it's like so illogical and inconsistent. It was like, because it's like for me, it would be like, I just feel like I'm in this by myself, and I'm just like looking around, like wait a minute. It's like, dude, I have to go to a job, and then I have to turn. And for my job at the time, I had to turn my phone off. So sometimes when you're at a job and you have to turn your phone off, you just don't remember to turn it right back on right away because it's phone off. And you tell, look, you can call the office and this, that, do that. But I would come home and literally I would get on the bus and come straight home. It wasn't like I was going to GameStop or stopping at the bar to get a drink. Come straight home. And it's like, because you missed that one phone call at 3:25 and then pick up right away, it's just like you just walk into this hailstorm. You're like, wait a minute, you looking around? It's like, do I have a mistress and not know about it? What's going on? And it's like, but you are
wife
so
doesn't
right,
need to be pregnant to lose it on if I missed a text or something.
Well, that's true.
Why didn't you answer the phone? I was like, I was driving. I don't answer the phone when I'm driving. I got it on silent. Trying to crash.
Like, but God forbid, you should try to call sometimes and you get like 3 missed calls, leaving a voicemail, and it's just like, huh? What? What are you talking about? It's like
you called? Like I called 3 times. Actually, I can see that you saw the message.
Right?
Oh no! I didn't
call a read receipt.
Okay, but being fathers,
go ahead.
It's been a crazy thing. I get the funniest stories. This is my favorite story. So I'm sitting there. This is when we only had the one child, and I think he was 3 years old at the time. And so we're sitting in there. We're having family time, Gevian. This is magical. This is the greatest thing that ever happened in my life. Even greater than him being born and being married. I'm sitting there. I'm seeing out of the side of my eye. I can see my wife is sitting there, and the 3-year-old has walked up to her. He's pulled his pants down around his ankles. He's bent over, and he farts right in her face. It's like right here. And the look on her face, and she was so angry. I was laughing. I was like, "You're not supposed to do that." And I'm trying not to laugh. I'm trying to be serious. Like, go to the corner. I want to high five him. I was like, "Oh, that was dope." And he
should have had a
ripped
Kit
it
Kat.
right. Absolutely ripped it right in her face. She was so angry. My wife can't take a joke for nothing. I was like, "Oh, I'm so glad you're 3. You're 4. It might not. You might be done."
You're right, and that's the thing is like I've seen people on social media like kind of bag on the series Married with Children. It's like I'm so tired of these shows where they just denigrate marriage. It's like, what's the point of being married? You're gonna feel like that. And it's like, dude, you have no sense of humor about being married, man. It's like, is it like to the ridiculous extreme? But it's like if you're married on some level, there's some elements of when you see that show of what goes on about how parents relate to kids relate to parents, how the parents relate to each other. And it's like, and it's the fact that despite that you all stick together and love each other and go through those things, because your kid can do that. And it's like, that's totally disrespectful, funny at the same time, but totally disrespectful. But the thing is, sometime 20 years down the line, you will still be laughing at it. Now, she might not be, she ain't laughing at it. She's still mad.
She acts like it's funny now, but I can tell.
Yeah, but now she can act like
not in that chuckle. She's just giving it out there so we don't think she's got a stick up her butt.
Basically, and then basically what it is that what you realize about marriages and also the parenthood thing is that y'all got history, and that's the thing. It's like despite the real joy and privilege of it is that despite the fact that there were times y'all all wanted to kill each other, you guys hung in there, you're still together, and you like. And it's like you said earlier, it's like think about whether or not you could hate this person for a year and still be with them, because that was my prayer before I got married. When I did my prayer, I called this the Solomonic prayer. Is that I said, Lord, give me somebody whom I will love even when the worst things are going on, even when the worst things are going down. And that becomes the same thing for your kids as well, is that you will love them no matter what, because we are all human beings, and at certain times we suck. There's just no getting around it. And sometimes as a human being, you are going to suck. The only thing I say to that is that don't take that as permission to suck all the time. Just suck in different ways. So you gotta learn your lessons with some of the things you suck about. You gotta get better. But the thing is, at the end of the day, you are a human being. You will make mistakes. Just make new ones. At least that shows you show some respect and concern about other people. You get better. But the thing is, you are going to suck. You're going to say things that aren't appropriate at a certain time. Might be true, but still funny, or just not appropriate. But the thing is that you still love each other anyway. So that's why, for me with Married Children, we were watching it one time. One of my girls said, she looked at me and she said, "Did Grandpa Dargan feel like that about you guys?" I had to laugh.
Maybe.
I said maybe. Exactly. I said maybe.
Oh man, this is the last. I got to tell you this one. I forgot about this story too. This thing is nuts. So this is when I lived in Texas. I was still married, and my wife was living in Manila with her brother. Well, he wasn't living. He was near her, so she was hanging out with her brother a lot because he was also in Manila. Yep. And my son's maybe like 6 months old, something like that. So he's in a stroller, and we've got a stroller. We go into this place. It's called it's called Cultura. It's where you go to get like snacks. I get my Filipino snacks. I bring them back to Texas. I give them to everybody that I work with. Hey, I just got back from the Philippines. So we're getting these snacks, and and the 6-year-old at the time, or 6-month-old at the time. Maybe he's a little bit old. Maybe he was like 9 months old, but he liked wrappers, right? He was like, so if he was fussy, my wife would give him like a little candy wrapper that was shiny, because he would he would be preoccupied. He would stop being fussy.
Yep.
So I'm sitting there and I'm getting like my snacks, and I think I'm waiting at the counter, and out of the corner of my eye, I see like my wife and her brother, who is a nurse. He is a trained medical practitioner. They're down at my son, and they're like sticking their finger in his mouth, and all of a sudden I start hearing some like choking noises. Obviously, I have been in the military for upwards of almost 20 years at this point. You got to do self-aiming buddy care every year, and certainly to deploy, you got to do it some more. So I've had to do all this stuff, which is essentially just they don't want to pay for first aid because I guess it's like branded. So that's the military's version of first aid. So I go over there. I'm looking. I was, what the hell's going on? And they don't want to tell me what's happened. And I hear the choking. And I was like, what the hell? So I undo him and I put him up on my arm. I lay him over. I'm like, what? Like pretty hard. And he all of a sudden you hear a noise and I see this like chocolate spit come out. And then he looks at me, and I could still, there's no breathing, and he's got a little tear in his eye, and he's looking at me, and he's got this look in his face. He's like, Daddy, you were the only one that can save me. So I turned him over. I'm like, what? Even harder, right? And this time the rapper comes out. I can hear him screaming and crying. I'm like, boom, game over. I won. I just saved the boy. You know, the pathway is clear. I was like, I just saved him. And my wife, she's looking at me like she wants to stab me.
That's right.
And I'm like, looking at her, I'm like, what the hell just happened? You know, I just saved our son here. You know, her and then her brother that are a nurse and trying to kill him. They're like poking the damn thing further in his mouth. So I saved him. And then I realized she thinks I hit him too hard.
Yep. That's right.
The first time I hit him, it didn't work. So I had to add some extra, hot sauce in that bad boy and get it out of there. And we're sitting there walking we're going back to the cab to go back to the apartment. And she will not speak to me. Her face is like red, or as red as she could get. And got the kid, and I look over at my brother-in-law. I was like, I'm not apologizing for nothing. I did the right thing.
Like, baby,
he's like, what are you talking about? I was like, he's like, you can't tell she wants to hurt me. And I guess it's gone wide over his head. He's not married. And we get into the house, or I'm sorry, into the cab. I put the stroller in the truck, and I'm getting to the door. I put the baby there, and she's on the other side of the door. Open it up, and we could see each other. I was like, listen, I'm sorry, but I had to do it. I was like, I apologize. Why? I saved his life. I was still wrong. Come on.
Hey, remember, sometimes you got to say you're sorry, even when you ain't.
I literally saved his life. She still won't admit it. Like, come on.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, that's the joys of marriage and or parenthood. Is that even despite all that stuff, you can always sit back and talk about it and laugh and have a good chuckle about it. But at the time, it don't feel good, but it's like you're still together, you're still happy, and it's just you get to see the worst of each other and the best of each other, and you still want to stick around each other anyway. That's the bottom line, and that's what it's all about. But yeah, no, man, it's like you can do some. It's kind of like The Rock said at one time. They were doing like a behind the scenes documentary on TV. He says, these people don't care about. They don't care about me. They only care about you. Only as good as the last thing you did. The last thing you did for them, and that's it. And that's really what a lot of it is. It's like it's like that Janet Jackson song. What have you done for me lately? It's like, what are you talking about? The 5 things I did back there. I should be like made for life. It's like, nope. You're always gonna be so different. But they're worth it. They are worth
Absolutely.
it. It is. They are worth every ounce of blood, sweat, tears, embarrassment, misplaced anger, misunderstood things, and they make you feel worth it as well. So that's the joy and beauty of it. So I'll say this, Wes. I hope everyone has had as much fun listening to us talk about this as I have had talking with you. Talking with you about it. Because this is, this is like when all this other stuff is not going, well, all this other stuff that's going on in life and all the things that, we preoccupy ourselves with. These are some of the things that to me are the most important. This is like, like for me, if I didn't have this, my life would be a little bit more emptier as a result, if not having my family. So, it's, to me, it's a great thing. And I enjoyed talking about this. I really did.
Absolutely. And, I can only echo those sentiments. We'll talk about something more hot button the next week. But I thought this would be something kind of fun to talk about, kind of
breaking
off what we talked about last week.
Most definitely.